So imagine a massive military freight train slowly rolling out of Europe, just packing up decades of American presence and, signaling this historic strategic shift.
Right, the Great Drawdown.
Exactly. But then, almost overnight, it's like someone throws it in reverse. It just jumps the tracks entirely, and suddenly they're dumping 5,000 heavily armed American troops right onto the Polish border.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, completely out of nowhere. And today, we are analyzing this, honestly, this strategic blindside that is currently giving NATO officials across the globe absolute whiplash.
It really is. I mean, it completely upends the assumed trajectory of Western defense strategy. Like, we are moving from this era of blanket regional guarantees into something that is far more targeted.
And far less predictable.
Yeah, exactly. Much less predictable.
And that unpredictability is exactly what we're digging into today. So, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission here is to make sense of this highly unexpected announcement. The U.S. surging these 5,000 additional troops into Poland. We want to figure out what this means, not just for that specific eastern border, but for the fundamental architecture of global security. And to do that, we are pulling from a pretty deep stack of sources today.
Yeah, we've got a lot to cover.
We do. We're looking at recent geopolitical reports, military analyses on force posture, and some fascinating internal memos that really reflect the very complicated and frankly fractured dynamics inside NATO right now.
And what those sources paint is a picture of an alliance that was just caught completely off guard.
Totally.
Because the momentum, literally up until the minute this announcement was made, was entirely in the opposite direction.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand the shockwave here, we have to look at what was supposedly like the confirmed plan just days prior.
Right, the baseline.
Yeah, the prevailing narrative in Washington, and this was heavily reported in defense circles, was reduction. Shrinking the European footprint, pulling assets back to reallocate them to other global theaters, or honestly, just bringing them home. And then, bam, an abrupt U-turn. Poland gets this massive influx of reinforcements. And the stated reason for this pivot is incredibly specific.
It is, and it forces us to kind of look past traditional military strategy for a second and look directly at the bilateral political relationship that's actually driving the machinery here.
Right, because, Donald Trump offered a very direct explanation for the move.
He did.
According to the reporting, he pointed specifically to the influence of Poland's new conservative president, Karol Nawrocki. Trump openly supported Nawrocki during his campaign.
Right.
And in making this deployment announcement, the administration heavily praised Poland, like framing them as America's premier ally in Europe. And the specific reason given was that Poland's commitment to defense spending just dramatically outpaces other NATO members.
Which is a rationale that, quite frankly, shifts the entire foundation of American military deployments.
How so?
Well, historically, U.S. troops were positioned primarily based on geographic vulnerability and, collective deterrence. But now, the administration is explicitly tying the physical presence of American forces to domestic political alignment, and specifically to hard financial metrics.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this shift. And it feels a bit like dealing with an aggressive insurance underwriter.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Like, imagine you have a neighborhood block policy, right? And suddenly, the underwriter says, hey, we are pulling coverage for the whole street because, people aren't updating their alarms.
Right, everyone is panicking.
Exactly, total panic. But then, the very next day, the insurance company not only reinstates your specific house, but they actually move an armed security team into your guest room.
Just yours.
Yeah.
Right.
Simply because you bought the premium alarm system and you happen to be on a first-name basis with the CEO.
That is a great analogy. And, while your house is undoubtedly secure, your neighbors are left staring out their windows.
Right.
They're wondering, if a fire starts next door, is that security team going to step in? Or will they just sit there and watch it burn?
Exactly. But I do have to push back a little on the administration's stated rationale here, because I'm struggling with the sheer scale of this move.
5,000 troops is a lot.
It's a massive logistical undertaking. So is this deployment purely a reward for political alignment and high defense spending? Or is there, an unavoidable strategic reality on the ground that is practically forcing this move, regardless of who happens to occupy the Oval Office?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that the political messaging is really acting as a spotlight for a much deeper structural shift in doctrine.
Okay.
The administration is essentially weaponizing the burden-sharing metric.
Weaponizing it. Wow.
Yeah. For years, the expectation of spending a certain percentage of GDP on defense, it was treated by many European capitals as a polite long-term aspiration.
Like a suggestion.
Right. And the U.S. historically just absorbed the difference to maintain stability in the region. But what the sources reveal is that this metric has transitioned into a hard, non-negotiable filter for engagement.
So it's no longer just an ideological alliance. It's becoming like a purely transactional framework.
Precisely. Poland isn't just receiving troops as a political favor. They have systematically built the financial and military infrastructure that aligns perfectly with this new transactional American requirement.
Right.
The political relationship acts as the catalyst, absolutely. But that relentless defense spending provides the structural justification that makes a deployment of this size viable to domestic audiences back in the U.S.
Which brings us to the geography, right?
Right.
Because the transactional nature of this deal doesn't fully explain the location.
No, it does.
Even if Poland is paying the ultimate premium, you don't just park 5,000 troops in their territory unless that specific territory is fundamentally critical. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
Poland isn't just a participant in NATO anymore. According to the analyses we're looking at, it has become the absolute center of gravity for the entire alliance.
Yeah, the geopolitical reality there is impossible to ignore. Poland has basically transformed into a fortified staging ground.
Right, they already have a huge presence.
Exactly. They already host thousands of American troops on a rotational basis. They have critical U.S. missile defense systems, like Aegis Ashore, fully operational right now.
Wow.
So by injecting 5,000 additional permanent-feeling troops into that mix, Washington is effectively cementing Poland as the primary bulwark of NATO's entire Eastern defense strategy.
It is the fortress.
It is.
And the stakes of the timing couldn't be higher. We are looking at a map where right next door, the war in Ukraine remains this grinding, unresolved crisis.
Completely.
Diplomatic channels are frozen. Multiple peace talks have just stalled out completely.
And that proximity is exactly why the military analyses in our sources focus so heavily on what they term hidden threats.
Hidden threats.
Yeah, because we aren't just talking about the risk of a conventional armored column rolling across the border. Western intelligence agencies are sounding the alarm on a massive escalation in hybrid warfare originating from Moscow.
Okay, let's dig into the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
Because the term hybrid warfare, it gets thrown around a lot. What does that actually look like on the ground in Eastern Europe right now?
So it manifests as asymmetrical tactics. They're designed specifically to destabilize a nation without crossing the threshold that would trigger a full NATO military response.
Like staying just under the radar.
Exactly. We're talking about highly sophisticated cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure, so power grids, banking sectors, railway logistics.
Jeez.
And we're seeing intense disinformation campaigns, sabotage operations on military supply lines, and even the weaponization of migration flows at the borders.
So it's basically this constant gray zone pressure designed to exhaust Poland from the inside out.
Yes, that's exactly it. The goal of hybrid warfare is deniability because, if a power grid goes down, it's really hard to justify launching a retaliatory missile strike.
Right, you can't just bomb someone over a server crash.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is exactly why the deployment of 5,000 conventional troops is so vital. It's not just a symbolic gesture. It functions as a physical tripwire.
Wait, hold on. How do conventional boots on the ground stop a cyber attack or a shadow sabotage operation?
Well, they don't stop the code itself, but they fundamentally alter the adversary's calculus.
Okay.
Think about it. When you place 5,000 American soldiers in the middle of a logistics hub, any Russian hybrid operation carries a massive, terrifying risk of accidental spillover.
Oh, I see.
Right. If a sabotage operation targets a rail line and accidentally kills a dozen U.S. soldiers, Moscow is no longer fighting a deniable shadow war with Warsaw. They've instantly triggered a hot war with Washington.
Wow.
So that physical presence forces the adversary to dial back their pressure campaigns because the margin for error is entirely gone.
That makes total sense. It's the difference between putting up a beware of dog sign and actually chaining a guard dog to the front gate.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
The threat of escalation becomes tangible.
The physical presence of American lives creates an undeniable barrier against those cascading asymmetrical threats.
Okay, so if this move serves as such a robust physical deterrent against a very clear, very dangerous set of threats,
Right.
the logical assumption would be that the rest of Europe would be breathing a massive sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Like you'd think they'd be thrilled that the eastern flank is suddenly locked down.
You would think so.
But the internal NATO memos and the diplomatic reports we're looking at show that the reaction across the alliance is actually deeply fractured.
It really is. The reaction exposes these deep fault lines within the alliance. The sources outline an environment of profound cognitive dissonance right now.
Because on one hand, you have the supporters who are heavily concentrated in the East.
Yes.
And they view this deployment as the ultimate security guarantee. I mean, it physically strengthens the flank, it sends an undeniable signal to Russia, and it heavily reassures those frontline allies who are living under the daily threat of this hybrid aggression we just talked about.
Yeah, for nations bordering the conflict, the calculus is very simple. More American guns equal more safety.
Right. But then you look at the capitals in Western and Northern Europe, and they are highly confused. And frankly, they're alarmed.
Very alarmed.
Because this sudden reversal, going from a policy of shrinking the American footprint to surging troops into one specific country, it has created a total vacuum of strategic clarity.
The mixed messaging is exactly what's causing the panic.
Yeah, I mean, put yourself in the shoes of a listener who might be living in a Western European NATO country right now. So what does this all mean for you? Do you feel safer because the eastern border of the alliance is heavily reinforced? Or are you terrified because while troops are rushing to Warsaw, there are still ongoing, very public discussions in Washington about pulling American troops out of your country?
What's fascinating here is how this internal friction really exposes the fragility of collective security when it collides with a transactional mindset.
Yeah.
You have to weigh the immediate tactical reassurance provided to the eastern flank against the deep strategic anxiety that's rippling through the rest of the continent.
Because it just shatters the illusion of the umbrella.
Precisely. The bedrock of NATO has always been strategic certainty. You know, the idea that an attack on one is an attack on all, and the U.S. military apparatus backs up that claim unconditionally.
Right.
But if Washington's long-term strategy involves reducing forces in Europe overall, while simultaneously surging them only in countries that meet specific political and financial criteria, well, then the entire concept of collective security begins to feel conditional.
It transitions from a regional guarantee to a series of bilateral contracts.
Exactly.
And unpredictable alliances are incredibly stressful for the members who don't currently have that premium contract. I mean, they are left wondering if the protective umbrella they've built their entire foreign policy around for 70 years is suddenly going to be pulled away the moment they miss a GDP spending target.
Which perfectly illustrates the fundamental transformation dominating our source material today. You know, this confusion over troop placements isn't just some scheduling error or a temporary diplomatic faux pas.
No.
It reveals a foundational shift in how the United States views its role in the world.
We are looking at a complete rewrite of the historical context. Because for decades, the understanding was relatively simple. Europe provided the geography, and Washington provided the overwhelming bulk of the power, the money, and the troops.
Right.
But now, there is an immense, forceful push for Europe to carry its own weight and achieve strategic autonomy.
Yes.
So the core question driving all these reports is this: is the United States using this 5,000 troop deployment to actually strengthen NATO, or are they actively reshaping the alliance to fit an America First vision?
That is the defining geopolitical question of this moment. Are we looking at a revitalization of the alliance or its slow deconstruction into something entirely different?
Let's look at it like a massive shift in a subscription service.
Okay.
For 50 years, Europe enjoyed the all-inclusive security package. It was essentially a flat rate, or maybe no strictly enforced rate at all, and you got the full weight of American military protection. Every channel, no ads, full coverage.
Right, the golden age of NATO.
Yeah, but now it feels like the U.S. is pivoting to an a la carte model, a highly tiered subscription. Only the members who pay the absolute premium rates, who meet the highest defense spending metrics and align perfectly with Washington's political goals like Poland, get the heavy-duty security guarantees and the 5,000 extra troops.
Well, everyone else gets downgraded.
Exactly. The rest of the alliance is bumped down to the basic tier, just constantly wondering when their service might get throttled or cut entirely.
This raises an important question because that a la carte analogy really highlights the ultimate paradox running through every piece of source material we've examined today.
The contradiction between the messaging and the action.
Exactly. The United States is simultaneously demanding that Europe step up and take care of itself. They are arguing forcefully that European capitals must carry more of the burden and depend significantly less on American military intervention.
Right.
Yet, at the exact same time they are preaching this distance and autonomy, Washington is putting 5,000 extra American boots directly into the most dangerous, volatile flashpoint on the entire continent.
It's like, take care of yourselves, stop relying on us,
Yeah.
but also we are moving a massive, heavily armed division into your front yard.
Right.
It's incredibly difficult to parse the ultimate goal there.
They are demanding European independence while actively stepping deeper into the center of the confrontation between NATO and Russia. And that creates deeper dependency for those frontline states.
Right.
So what the analysts in our sources are fiercely debating is whether this isolated deployment to Poland is a tactical one-off event born out of a specific political moment, or if it marks the absolute beginning of a highly transactional era of military posturing across the globe.
An era where collective defense is basically a relic.
Yeah.
And every troop movement, every missile battery is negotiated based on individual nations' financial contributions and political loyalty.
A shift from a unified shield to a patchwork of conditional arrangements. And honestly, the secondary effects of that shift will rewrite European domestic politics for a generation.
It really has been a wild journey through these sources today. I mean, we started by looking at a surprising, almost confusing political pivot. A massive military maneuver tied directly to Poland's new conservative president and their willingness to outspend everyone else on defense.
A move that completely reversed the expected American drawdown.
Right, and then we broke down the mechanics of how that pivot slammed right into the urgent realities on the ground. The physical proximity to the war in Ukraine, and those invisible gray zone dangers of cyber attacks and hybrid warfare that really necessitate a physical tripwire of American troops.
The exact environment that makes Poland the undeniable, indispensable center of gravity for Eastern defense right now.
Exactly. And finally, we unpacked how this single deployment of 5,000 troops has sent this shockwave of existential anxiety to the rest of the NATO alliance. Just leaving Western and Northern Europe wondering if the U.S. is reinforcing the shield or simply changing the price of admission to an exclusive club.
It's an incredibly complex web of military deterrence, domestic politics, and economic leverage. So, as we synthesize all of this, what stands out to you? Is this sudden transactional shift a necessary, long overdue wake-up call for European defense spending? Or is it a highly dangerous mixed signal being broadcast into an incredibly volatile region, shattering the illusion of collective security at the worst possible time?
It's a massive question with global implications. And I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder, something that really builds on the game theory of everything we've read today.
Okay.
If a nation's security guarantees from the United States are now fundamentally tied to specific domestic defense spending and bilateral political favor, rather than a blanket regional promise, will European countries start aggressively competing against each other?
Oh, wow. The fragmentation of the European defense market.
Precisely. Like, will we see allies actively reshaping their own domestic industries, altering their own foreign policies, and cannibalizing regional cooperation just to outbid their neighbors and win the favor of American military protection?
Oh, that's a dark thought.
Because if the geopolitical neighborhood is getting more dangerous by the day, and the security patrol is only parking their armored vehicle in front of the house that pays the highest premium, it won't be long before everyone in the neighborhood stops looking out for each other entirely. And they start doing whatever it takes at the expense of everyone else to make sure that tank is parked in their driveway.
The old tracks haven't just been jumped, they've been completely torn up.
The freight train has left the station, and right now, nobody knows where the new tracks lead. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.